don't want to watch your stupid video. Just tell me what are the best tier 4s for the Astonishing X-Men. Okay. Number 1, Jubilee Passive. Number 2, Pryde Passive. Number 3, Iceman Passive. Number 4, Bishop Passive. Number 5, Jubilee Special. Number 6, Jubilee Basic. Number 7, Bishop Ultimate. And number 8, Pryde Basic. What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the Astonishing X-Men. We did a lot of testing to bring you these opinions. We're going to be recommending what we feel are the best tier 4 ability upgrades for this team, as well as the ideal ISO-8 classes. And yeah, there were a lot of really interesting interactions that we weren't quite sure how they would play out until we tested them. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so we're taking a look at the abilities on MSF.gg, and what we feel is the most important first ability you have to upgrade is the Jubilee Passive. And as you can see here, when you put the T4 in the Jubilee Passive, it's going to do 3 things. It's going to give the entire team an extra 10% max health in all game modes, which is already super valuable, but especially valuable on a raid team. Specifically in raid, it is going to give the entire team another 10% damage. So getting 10% health and 10% damage, very big. And then arguably the most important thing that it does, it is going to give Beast an additional 10% speed bar whenever any Astonishing X-Men ally drops below 50% health. But what's going to make this team really unique is that their kits are basically set up so that they're constantly bouncing to low health and bouncing back. So their health bars are going to be going all over the place, and anytime they get low, Beast is going to gain a bunch of speed, and then they're also going to gain speed on any kill. So the end result is that Beast is going to be taking a lot of turns. And he's also going to gain 1 ability energy whenever someone drops below 50%. So it's a really, really big deal. This basically takes it from him needing 5 people to drop below 50% for him to get a full turn, to him getting nearly a full turn when only 3 people drop below 50%. So it's a lot more turns for Beast with ability energy, and it's going to be a lot more healing. He does damage when he uses his heal. His ultimate is tons of buffs. He has a passive, so he's healing on turn for a tremendous amount of health. So yeah, more Beast turns, super, super important, and then 10% health and damage to the entire team. Pretty good too. All right, the next ability we're going to talk about is one of 2 abilities that are incredibly important for this team as a raid team. Please note that these abilities are not as important outside of raid. So if you're primarily going to be using this team as like a blitz team and maybe one of your smaller war teams until they're powerful enough to overtake your main raid team, you don't need to do this right away, but you absolutely want to do this as soon as you're ready to use them for serious raiding. So we're looking at the Pryde Passive here. It's going to do 2 things when you put the T4 in it, as you can see. The first is when she drops below 50% max health, instead of gaining 1 turn of stealth, she'll gain 2. But that's not as big a deal as the other thing that it does, which is in raid, instead of having a 60% chance to apply evade to the most injured Astonishing on enemy turn, that becomes 100%. So again, what that's saying is every single enemy turn, Pryde is going to give an evade to the most injured Astonishing X-Men ally. Only having 60% means several turns could go by where she doesn't provide that evade, and that evade actually ends up making a huge difference, firstly because it could save someone from getting hit by something that may kill them as they're already the most injured, but then also part of her kit is that she is going to heal the most injured ally whenever an Astonishing X-Men member evades. So if she's passing out a lot of evades, more evades are going to happen, and more evades happening translates directly to her doing more healing. So it's very, very important, very, very good. All right, and this is the other ability that is definitely good, but it's considerably better in raid. And again, all the other abilities we're going to talk about after this are just really, really good in all game modes. But again, this is the other really raid exclusive one, the way we see it. And so a T4 in the Iceman Passive is going to do a few things. Firstly, as you can see, it is going to increase the damage that he does 30% of the time on any enemy turn. And if they're slowed 100% of the time, so it's just a little bit of extra chip damage that he's going to be doing constantly, because most of the time, most of the enemies will be slowed. So it's going to be a ton of chip damage. So it will definitely add up. More importantly, he's always going to reduce an additional 10% of the enemy armor when they have slow. So that's also going to make it easier to kill the enemies more quickly, which is going to result in more speed going to the team. But again, most importantly, he's going to lower the outgoing damage of any enemies with slow and raid a full 10%. So that ends up making a big difference because raid enemies tend to have really overtuned damage. So the more you can reduce their damage, the better. And they're already hitting into Bishop a lot of the time, who has damage reduction. All right, the next ability we're talking about is the Bishop Passive. So upgrading the T4 into this ability does a couple things. Firstly, it's going to reduce the amount of damage he takes when he has Taunt by another 10%. He's going to get 20% damage reduction while he has Taunt. And remember, he's literally going to spawn with Taunt and Defense up. So he's going to have Defense up and 20% damage reduction. And then if the enemies are slowed, Iceman is going to be reducing their outgoing damage in raid. So you're going to put Bishop in an excellent position to really be able to soak up a ton of hits and dish out quite a bit of damage in return, because he'll keep getting charged. As for that retaliating damage, it's also, more importantly, going to take his counterattack chance from 50% to 100%. And 100% counterattack chance is a ton of extra damage. And as you'll see when we start talking about their ISO-8, it's also quite a bit of utility. Very, very important. You want him doing as many counters as possible. And considering he's literally going to spawn in with a taunt and he is constantly looking for opportunities to jump in and taunt, he's going to make good use of it. All right, the next T4 that we strongly recommend is the Jubilee Special, as I like to call it, the Combo Maker. This move is pretty pivotal. If you set this ability up right and play around it right, you can accomplish some very, very powerful effects. So putting the T4 in it is going to do a few things. Firstly, instead of Jubilee and 2 other Astonishing X-Men getting offense up, the entire team is going to get offense up. That's just quite a bit more outgoing damage, especially if it goes to someone who does a lot of counterattacking. It's a bunch of free damage in there. Or if it goes on Iceman when it normally wouldn't have, when he's just going to be attacking them whenever they're taking a turn. So it's a bunch of free damage. And then, of course, it is also going to increase the amount of damage done by the ability. And it is going to call for an additional assist half the time. So it already calls for sometimes 3, sometimes 4 assists. But guaranteeing that you always call all the assists is more damage. But the reason it's important to get this damage is because it's unavoidable, it's unblockable, and on kill, it will spread 3 negative effects that the primary target had to all other enemies. There are ways to set this up where you can intentionally target this at someone who Jubilee already put a blind on, and if you're able to kill the target, you're going to apply blind to the entire enemy team. It's a really big deal, and so for that, you want everyone who's assisting to have offense up, you want as many assists as possible, and you want to make sure that you do indeed get that kill, so you can spread all those negative effects. So it's very important. All right, the next ability we're going to be talking about is the Jubilee Basic. Now, what's interesting about this one is that if you're only using this team in raid, this T4 isn't as important, but it is going to make a significant difference in all other game modes. So it's doing a couple things. First, it's just adding 60% more damage to Jubilee's actual basic attack. And considering this team has a good amount of offense up uptime, you're definitely getting decent value out of that. But more importantly, you're getting an increased chance to apply a blind from 50% 70%. The 70% chance, unlike a 50%, is at least suggesting that you're going to get that blind most of the time. But what's interesting is that also applies to her counterattacks, her assists, of which she'll be getting a healthy amount of both, as well as her ISO-8 bonus attack. So if you are always attacking with Jubilee into a vulnerable target, you now have a 70% chance to follow up on any of her abilities, also applying a blind to the primary target. So because you're going to be making use of this so much more often, anytime you can land a blind, that's usually a lot of damage avoided. It might also just be what you need to set up to spread blind to everyone, with her special being used as the combo. So yeah, a lot of opportunities to make really good use of it. But in raid, she's always going to apply blind anyway. So it's actually not as important specifically for raid, but it is very important everywhere else. All right, now we're talking about the Bishop Ultimate. And this one's pretty straightforward. Why should you put a T4 in the Bishop Ultimate? Damage. Lots of damage. That's pretty much it. He's going to be using this ability a ton. He gains speed whenever he's attacked to get charged. So he's going to be taking a lot of turns. They all gain speed bar whenever any enemy dies. There's speed ups going around from the Beast Ultimate. There's a lot of opportunities for him to take a lot of turns. He can get ability energy from the Beast ult and literally use his ultimate back to back to back because it's only 2 energy in the first place. And when you put the T4 in it, it adds 60% more damage normally. But if he's charged, and he'll be charged a large majority of the time that he's on the field, it's going to do an extra 120% damage instead. He's also going to have offense up pretty often, and this is a splash damage attack, so you're getting that good amount of damage to an adjacent group of enemies as well. So yeah, it's just a lot of damage, And considering you're going to be using this all the time, it's way worth it. And finally, we're going to be talking about the Kitty Pryde Basic. Putting the T4 in the Kitty Pryde Basic just does a couple things. It does a bit of damage. It goes from 210 to 250%, but Kitty Pryde is not putting out a ton of damage, so that's not super important. But what is important is it will force both her basic and her counter and assist, as well as if you're running her striker, which we don't recommend, her ISO bonus attack, to instead of clearing one positive effect, clear two. So the Astonishing X-Men team are a little bit light on buff removal, unless you're going to be running them the way that we're going to recommend, which will greatly help. But in short, you can't have too much buff removal. And so always getting 2 for 1 on that basic, and considering she'll often have counter and be called to assist, the extra buff removal, definitely useful. And you can just remove some really, really big abilities. You know, taking an offense up off of someone right before they do a big attack, or pulling an immunity off of someone right before Jubilee's about to go so she can blind them. There's so many instances where pulling a buff off of a character can make a big difference, so you definitely wanted to include this one. All right, now we're just going to mention a couple honorable mentions. These are upgrades that we do feel are very strong and we didn't overlook. We just don't feel comfortable saying that they're absolutely necessary. But we're going to start off with the top honorable mention, the Beast Special. Now, for what it's worth, if you didn't know, I do these evaluations with a group of people that help out with the tier list stuff and various other things. So huge shout out to Dance and Dirk, Hu and Kioma, and Livepool for helping me out with all this. But yeah, we get together and we decide on the efficiency of upgrading these abilities. And in this one in particular, I was outvoted, but for what it's worth, I do feel that this one is also a 4-star upgrade, but ultimately we're going with a 3-star. And what you've got here is putting the T4 in Beast Special. It's going to add 50% damage to the ability. However, it's also going to improve the amount of debuffs that it removes. Instead of 50% of the time clearing 1 debuff from the entire Astonishing team and 50% removing 2, it is going to always remove 2 negative effects from the full Astonishing team. So because they're a bit light on cleanse, and because Beast is going to be getting so many turns and so much ability energy, being able to constantly cycle through that special and remove as many negative effects as possible is a major advantage to this team. So for that reason, I really like the Beast Special. There you have it. And the other honorable mention on this team is the Jubilee Ultimate. It's pretty good value and it adds quite a bit of damage and a bit of utility, but ultimately we don't feel that this is going to be a make or break that's going to significantly determine the output of the team. In particular, because it's on a character who's not going to be doing an insane amount of damage as it is. But so putting the T4 in the Jubilee ult is going to take the damage to the primary up an additional 100% and another 20% piercing. It will reduce the speed bar of the target being hit by another 10%, and since they're getting stunned, removing their speed bar and stunning them means that they'll be stunned for longer, and you're also slowing them, so you're getting really good value on that speed bar rewind. And then it's also adding another 50% damage and 20% piercing to all targets that it's hitting. So it's pretty strong. Not having it doesn't mean that your team won't be functioning optimally, but if you're looking to do a few more upgrades to this team, this one is definitely good value. All right, so now we're going to talk about our recommended ISO-8 classes for the Astonishing X-Men. Again, we did a lot of testing to try to figure this out. There's some really interesting interactions that we weren't sure exactly how they were going to work out, but based on what we found, we're pretty confident in saying that this is the ISO-8 we recommend. So we're going to start off with Kitty Pryde. We recommend that you run Kitty Pryde as a healer. And the main reason for this is they are a raid team, so anyone that doesn't have a much better class to be taking advantage of should probably default to healer. The more healing they can get, the better. After all, their main game mode they're trying to succeed in is one all about sustain. Kitty in particular is going to be giving out healing as long as Jubilee's an ally. Anytime an enemy misses, which is going to be happening a lot with Jubilee constantly blinding people, and anytime an Astonishing X-Men member evades, which is also going to be happening a ton because on every enemy turn, she's going to be giving an evade to the lowest health Astonishing X-Men ally. With all the evades and all the misses, she's going to keep healing anyway. So her ability to heal for more, pass out minor regens, etc. definitely helps the raid team. All right, now we're going to be talking about Iceman. The ISO-8 class that we recommend for Iceman is to run him as a raider. This team is going to be largely built around one character in particular, being the designated striker, which we'll get to. But so you want as many vulnerables on the field as possible for that designated striker. And Iceman makes an excellent raider because everything he does is multi-target. His ultimate is going to hit all enemies. I guess his special is the one thing that's single target, but you're not going to be using it that often. And then anytime he uses a basic, he's going to be hitting multiple targets. And then he even has additional opportunities to crit on his passive. And critting on his passive, interestingly, will apply vulnerable. If he's a skirmisher, however, it won't remove positive effects, which is very interesting. But as a raider, it will apply vulnerable, and so he gets a free opportunity to try and crit and apply vulnerable to every enemy on their turn, as long as they're slowed. Otherwise, a 30% chance. But yeah, it's not only an opportunity for some free damage, but he's going to be putting out quite a few vulnerables. All right, now we're going to talk about Beast, and Beast is pretty straightforward. We definitely recommend that he be run as a healer. The reason for this, even though he makes a good striker, he does not make the best striker on the team, and he makes an insanely good healer. He's got a really good health pool, but most importantly, Jubilee is going to be funneling him tons and tons of speed, so he's going to be taking a lot of turns. So a character that can take a ton of turns is a character that can pass out a ton of healing just based off taking turns because of the ISO-8 healer passive. Beyond that, he's also going to be doing a ton of active healing by pressing his special all the time. So there's just so many reasons why Beast makes an absolutely incredible healer on this team. All right, now we're going to be talking about Bishop. And I will say that what we ultimately settled on for Bishop is not what I would have originally expected. Bishop's main role on the team is doing a ton of damage and being their primary frontline tank. So you would have thought that we would be going with one of the options for either more damage or more tankiness. But what we actually discovered was that Bishop is best as a skirmisher. And the reason for this is because counterattacks can apply vulnerable. So given that he has a 100% counterattack chance, anytime anyone is hitting Bishop, he is immediately retaliating and putting vulnerable on them. So Bishop is going to, by himself, cover most of the enemy team in vulnerable. But it gets better, because when attacking someone with vulnerable as a skirmisher, you also remove positive effects. So once the entire team is covered in vulnerable, and remember he's being helped out with that by Iceman, then anytime someone attacks Bishop, not only is he going to retaliate, but he's also going to remove some of their positive effects. So Bishop actually takes on the role of the primary frontline tank, the large majority of their sustained damage, and he's going to be stripping tons of positive effects constantly. What a show off. All right, and finally, we're going to be talking about Jubilee. Now, as you may have guessed from the other classes that we've assigned, Jubilee is the designated striker. She makes an incredible striker, first and foremost because she does a moderate amount of damage and has good uptime on her offense up, but definitely most importantly, because her ISO bonus attack has a 70% chance to apply blind, and in raid will always apply blind. So what this means is every single Jubilee ability into a vulnerable target will also follow up and apply blind to them. So you can just turn Jubilee into a super blinding machine that blinds everyone she attacks pretty much, and that is incredibly useful to capitalize on. And then that also sets you up to be able to combo off of her special at a later time and spread blind to the entire team. So super, super useful, not to mention that anytime you're blinding someone, if an enemy misses, Pryde is going to heal the lowest health Astonishing X-Men member. So yeah, it just all comes together really, really well. More blinds, more wins. All right, so that is our recommended Orange Essentials, the best T4 ability upgrades, as well as ISO Essentials, what we recommend the absolute best ISO-8 classes for this team. So I hope that helps. Thank you guys very much for checking out this video. I do want to be sure to thank the entire Brain Trust, so Hu and Kioma, Jansen Dirk, and Livepool. Huge shout out to those guys for taking some time to help me test all this and giving their input. Shout out to MSF.gg for, of course, running an awesome site that we can use to reference for all this stuff. And yeah, thank you to you guys for checking it out. So that's all I've got for you for now. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and enjoy a fireworks display. And I will see you guys real soon. Until next time. Peace!